Hi, my name's Keith Cooper for Northlight Images, and in this video I'm going to have a look at the GFX100S Mark II. However, I'm going to look at it from the point of view of a user, and a very happy user, of a GFX100S. So I'm going to go through some differences, what differences I noticed, what differences there are that don't mean much to me. And there is always a caveat here, the limits of my testing here. I have not been through testing this with an extensive variety of Fuji lenses. I've tested it with a few odds and ends and some adapted lenses, but this is very much a personal view about why I would choose medium format. Whether, if you've got one of these, you should update to one of these. I'm going to say not unless you've got money burning hole in your pocket. It's an excellent camera. There are differences. I'll go through some of the differences and things and what it makes. But also I'm going to come back to some considerations for if you've been thinking of moving to medium format. Some of the things that might be of interest, and having these two cameras here, there are some distinct questions answered to me as to what you might want to do. Of course, it will all depend on what it is you want to get out of your photography, what sort of photography you do. And that's why I emphasize again, this is very much based on my work as an architectural and industrial photographer. So for me, the absolute ideal lens for my architecture is this ginormous great Fuji 30mm tilt shift lens. Now this is excellent. It's one of the best tilt shift lenses, wide ones, I've ever tested. It's great. It's great on either of these. So what's the difference between these? We'll get rid of some of the this out of the way to start with. What's the real differences between these? Well, have a look at the specs if you want. In picking it up, I won't say I immediately noticed that this one's 10 grams, 15 grams lighter than this one. Doesn't really make much difference. The feel of it, it's a more grippy plastic leatherette type covering on it. There are a few minor, some buttons are slightly different shape, but I don't think you're really going to notice that. The electronic viewfinder on this one is, if you put the two next to each other, noticeably better. It's got a higher magnification, which means the image looks a bit bigger. It's also a higher resolution, so it's about 50% more resolution in it. So is it noticeable? Yes, if you put two next to each other. Here we have a view through the viewfinder. Of course, you can't really tell much from just looking at that, but there is the whole point, that if you're used to using it, yes, this one feels a bit better, but do I really notice the difference? No. If you want a massively better viewfinder, and this depends on how you use your camera, what you use it for, then you want the GFX100 Mark II, which has a very nice viewfinder on it. Yeah, these are great as well. No problems there. But if I was to pick up just one of these cameras and look through it, would I instantly know which was which? No, I wouldn't. Always remember that just because the numbers look better doesn't actually mean you're necessarily going to see much of a difference. So that's the state of that. We've got better magnification. Other bits and pieces. Yes, this one has an improved processor in it, which means you can get 7 frames per second out of this compared to 5 with this. Now, I'm going to say that if 7 versus 5 frames per second makes a big difference to you, then why are you considering medium format? What reasons have you got? There are, if you're interested in frames per second, there are many 35mm mirrorless cameras which have excellent performance. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be buying a camera like this for its speed. This is not to me a sports camera. Now, I'm sure some people will use it for that, and some people will say, yes, it's great. Oh, it's better. It's got a bigger buffer in it and things like that. These are things that don't make much difference to me, because I use a camera. Both I enjoy using cameras, so I take pictures for myself, but I also use it as part of my work as an industrial, architectural type photographer. That means that I'm not really pushing the performance of any of these things. A few years ago, I've used the Canon 5DS for years, 50 megapixel. And excellent camera. I kept it for years. And several people said, why don't you get a Canon mirrorless, an R5? Well, I tested an R5 and there were elements of it in that its dynamic range I could see in terms of being able to process the files. The files were a little bit more amenable to processing, pushing whatever, bringing up shadows and whatever than the 5DS. But not enough that it really made a significant difference, which is why I kept the 5DS. And it's only because Canon, over the years, never got round to bringing out a high-resolution version of the 5DS or anything like that, that I looked at, and I've got videos looking at this. I tried this out a few times, 100S, and I decided that I actually rather liked the image quality I got and the options. Now, I use this 100S, I use it with adapted lenses. I shoot 35mm lenses sometimes on it. All depends what I've got. If I put 35mm lens on this, or this one for that matter, and use it in a crop mode, I've still got 65 megapixels, more and better megapixels than I got from the 5DS. So even if I'm just using an old lens for something, for some specific use, I've got that option. If I go to the 4-3, the full size of this, then yeah, if I'm using lenses like this, and recently this one here that I'm testing on this is a Canon TSE50, which I just got recently. Superb lens. About the only thing that needs a bit of fixing on this, and I will be doing a specific look at how well this performs. The only thing I really noticed on this is I need in the raw processing to get rid of a little bit of chromatic aberration. It's only a pixel or so. It's noticeable, it's there, it's easily fixable. You don't need special camera raw, and when I'm doing Photoshop, fixes it perfectly well. At extreme shift, I'll mention this, just as an aside. At extreme shift in the corners, yes, there's a tiny, there's a bit of vignetting, and quality does drop off in the far corners if you do a diagonal shift, such that I'd need sharpening. But anyway, I'm going to look at that again separately as a lens. But suffice to say, I don't begrudge buying this lens whatsoever. It's superb. It gives about a 40mm equivalent field of view, 35mm equivalent on this. This goes really well with the 30mm tilt shift. And if I really need wider, I've got wider as well. But back to the GFX100 II. What else? Oh, the USB is faster. Well, I take cards out and pop them into a reader, so yeah, that doesn't really make much of a difference. It's got the same charging. Battery capacity or lifetime number of shots is supposed to be a little bit higher. I didn't test it enough to really get this, but I always carry a couple of batteries with me anyway, and I've never run into problems with the GFX100S. I can't imagine I would with the 100S II. So yeah, we've got two very nice cars, physically very the same. They even take, they're physically the same enough that I could use the same L bracket that I was using with this one, would fit this one perfectly well. You can see it here. It's a Rigetti L bracket that I've used for a while with this. Just makes it easier on the tripod and things to change it, swap it over and do things like that. Good things, L brackets. I did not use, when I was shooting with the 30mm here, did not use the foot that comes with it, nor did I use the TSE frame for the 50mm here for it. I wasn't worried about parallax problems. If you're stitching images, then yeah, that's it. But yeah, what really do I notice about this? It has an 80 ISO mode. Now, it's supposedly, and I was reading up people's various comments and things on this, it supposedly exhibits slightly more dynamic range at 80 ISO than you can get with this one at 100. I pulled up a few images, tried processing them, similar images that I'd taken on each one, and the eye of faith could probably detect a slight difference. But in terms of real world taking photos, yes, it's better on this than this, But could I reliably, if I looked at a picture, tell you whether it was taken on this one at 100 or this one at 80? No, I couldn't. Now, this is the current model for this. It comes in. So if you want to buy a new one, you'd be buying one of these most likely. But I come back to prices and various other aspects in a moment. Is there anything else in it? Yes, the image stabilization is improved in this. It's supposedly 8 stops versus 6 stops for this. Now, I happily take the 100S out and use it handheld. Now, I keep the ISO up to try and keep shutter speed at 20th, 30th, if I'm doing lowish light. I do sometimes have to shoot handheld on work jobs because tripods may not be a safe option. There are places I take cameras to get pictures where lugging a tripod and setting one up with me would be a health and safety problem. And there are places like busy factories as well, and things where you really don't want stuff standing around, where you're just moving around, you're just taking pictures and stuff like that. But that's the work what I want. Did I notice a difference on it? Well, image stabilization is actually very difficult to test. If you're curious, hunt out some of the specs that the camera companies use for deciding on how to measure it. It strikes me very arbitrary and a little bit of approach to working out how good it is. Of course, it gives numbers, and of course there is a subset of photographers who go by the numbers. If the numbers are better on one camera, the other camera must automatically be better. The numbers don't give you the ergonomics or anything like that. They don't tell you how cluttered, how messed up the menu is. These are essentially the same in that respect. So, 2 cameras. Why would I pick one? Well, if I was buying a new one and getting into it, I might well pick this. However, and here's the bit I said about getting into medium format. If you wanted to say, you've decided you're producing images where the amount of detail is important, so you're looking where you appreciate the number of megapixels, where 50, 60 isn't enough, but you're looking for a different approach. You're looking for lenses perhaps that give you a different feel to them at aperture, which you do get from the larger sensor on this. Now, if you really want that, you'll get yourself something with an even bigger sensor, or I suppose you could go back to medium format film if you really want to make things difficult for yourself, but it's something I gave up years and years ago. But in terms of of getting into medium format. Now, I've done stuff looking at why I made the change, and it was partly because I'd got compatibility with the old world stuff. But if you're looking at lenses for this, lenses are expensive. These need good lenses for optimum performance. However, before you think you have to have good lenses for optimum performance, I've tested old adapted lenses on this and they work very well. This TSE 90, this is a 1992 vintage lens. This one's a bit newer than that, but the lens came out in 1992. 90mm tilt shift works a treat. Because this works a treat and I don't use it that often, that's why I bought the TSE 50 here, not the TSE 90. Because remember, there's a 0.79 crop factor to give you the rough equivalent of focal lengths on it. So we've got this. Let's say you want to get into medium format. I have to look at some prices I've noticed here. Used, and this is just some UK prices looking around this morning. I can get one of these. This is the 100S. I can get one of these in good condition for about £2,400. If I want brand new equivalent, I can buy a new one still. They're still being advertised, £3,500. So that's for one of those. If I want one of these, I will pay £5,000. So if I make it the choice between getting one of these, GFX100S Mark II, lovely camera, or a good condition used 100S, I have got £2,600 left over £2,600 will buy me a very nice lens. In fact, the cost of this body is the same as buying a second-hand one of these and this TSE 50. Now, you do need an adapter as well, which will cost you a few £100. This is a photodiox one, by the way. I don't claim that this is the best or anything like that. It was just someone kindly gave me this one to use, and it works, and it has given excellent performance. So, you know, you will need an adapter if you're going to use these lenses. So, essentially, if I wanted to get into medium format, if I was an architectural photographer who'd been using Canon kit tilt shift lenses, then buying a second-hand one of these. Now, I could go for a GFX50 model, the 50 megapixel. I'd say, yeah, fine, great if you want to get into it, even cheaper. But if you're after that image quality you get from this sensor, and it's essentially the same sensor in here, I could see no significant differences in images. Now, it might be slightly better autofocus in this, but yeah, I don't use autofocus that often. So what we've got is, yes, go for medium format. You can have one of these plus one of these, or that. In fact, if you were going the used route, and there's no reason not to, I mean, I had a camera recently from I borrowed from Park Cameras here in the UK. That was a used, and it was new in box. It was superb. So if you want to go used, you'll get a warranty. Get one of these and treat yourself to a couple of lenses. You can buy one of these and two autofocus, proper Fuji G mount lenses. You'll be able to pick up that for the cost of getting this. Now, how much are those extra few frames per second worth? How much are the other improvements? You really do need to have a look at the specs, but if you're pushing the specs for it, you might think, well, do I really need this? Look too at the other ones, the 100 Mark II. They are all subtly different. But, yes, I do love taking pictures with this medium format stuff. I really like using this kit. Fuji just fixed the problems I had with tethering. Not that I got this for tethering, but it's nice that it now works. So I've got this. It comes down to what you really want it for. Now, you've got lots of money burning holes in your pocket. Go out and buy all the proper kit. But one other thing, it does mean that this one here, it's a few years older than this model, does mean that when the next model, the GFX, let's say 200, comes out, or 200S, we'll wait for a little while for that, in a few years' time, I have a perfectly good workable camera here, likewise here, but I will notice a big difference. But then I always tended to do that with my Canon gear. So I had a 1DS, all of 11 megapixels, but full frame to start with. Then I moved to a 1DS Mark III. I never went via the 1DS Mark II. And the 1DS Mark III I held on to for a few years until the 5DS came out. So I've gone 11, 21, 50 megapixels, 100 megapixels. Essentially, I've noticed over the years in the improving cameras that you really need to double the megapixels for it to be noticeable. What would I still like to see on these? I would love to see the pixel shift ability of this camera match the Panasonic S1R I tested a few years ago. I tested an S1R. I've got a video. Well, I haven't got videos. It predates me making videos. Amongst the lenses I tested on the S1R were a 50mm like this, and it works exceedingly well. I find the approach to pixel shift on this clunky, but it's clunky on a lot of things. Well, I say this and this. Yeah, that's something I'd like to see addressed, but that's almost an aside here. So there you have it. There are no obvious differences for me. They're both excellent cameras. If the specs of this make a difference to you, get one of these. But, you know, as somebody who happily uses older kit and values it for what you can get out of it, this is going to last me for a good few years. In fact, I still have my 5DS sitting here, which gets used for some industrial work on occasions. Let's say times where I might not want to take such an expensive camera with me as this, and some foundries are particularly bad for that. The dust you get in foundries is very bad for cameras and their insides. Quite often metallic dust with sharp edges, it just causes damage to things. But anyway, here we have suitable collection on my desktop here. Yeah, take your pick. But if you're interested in getting into medium format, think carefully about what's available. But thanks very much to Fuji for lending me this. I do appreciate it. I did tell them that I was never going to say, yay, it's vastly much better, but they wouldn't expect that anyway. Yeah, there you go. Hope that was of some interest. If you've got any questions, please do let me know, because it's people's questions about this. This is going back, but obviously I'm going to be coming back to testing with the lens here, the 50mm, and we'll see what we get from that. Anyway, thanks for watching again. Cheers, bye.